Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Lori, and I am so excited today to be joined by a friend, Danny, who will tell you all about his story. It's really exciting because I feel like we know each other kind of peripherally through work, and we both know we have BPD, but we've never had a full-on in-depth conversation with it, which I think is so cool. So really excited to have Danny here. Before we get started, just wanted to let everybody know that we have a brand new Patreon subscriber, Brittany. So Brittany, thank you so much for all of your support. I really appreciate it. Danny, welcome. So happy to have you.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us just about who you are generally? You can do a chronological or just a random amount of things that you want us to know about you.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Danny. I use he or they pronouns. I am a psychiatric social worker. I am a gay and transgender man. I have 3 cats.
Me too.
I recently started pole dancing class, which I'm very excited about.
Okay. Do you like it? Because I tried it a couple months ago and it was so hard I had to stop. My body hurt so bad.
I only done 2 classes so far.
Okay.
I've liked it. So, I feel very robotic. It doesn't come super naturally to me yet, but it takes practice, right? So
totally. I was I have never felt less sexy in my entire life than doing this. But okay, anyways, that's amazing. I love it. And you identify as having a historical diagnosis of BPD. Is that right?
yes. So I consider myself in remission. I don't really believe for myself that you can never really fully recover from BPD. You're always going to have, some of the traits and the symptoms, but you can get better.
Yeah, totally.
To a point where it doesn't completely control your life anymore. And I believe that I'm in that spot. But, I started experiencing symptoms around the age of, I would say, about 13 years old. One of the first things that was probably the biggest red flag is that I started cutting around that time.
Mm-hmm.
I was friends with a lot of people who also happened to end up being diagnosed with borderline. It's one of those birds of a feather thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the symptoms I was experiencing felt kind of normal. All of my friends were also going through it at the same time. But, it wasn't normal. And I'm very lucky, in retrospect now, I did have a few friends that weren't experiencing those symptoms or those issues. A couple of my friends actually reported me to the school counselor when I was in middle school because of the self-harm. Luckily, I was able to get help early.
Nice.
So I started counseling at the ripe age of 14 and I'm still in counseling today.
Yeah.
So, that's been, almost 2 decades of counseling now, and a lot of different types of therapies. I have had the absolute gift of being able to go through DBT 3 separate times.
Wow. Full program or groups or?
Well, groups, yeah. And groups
okay, yeah.
and some one-to-one therapy around it too.
Nice.
But okay, so moving through chronologically here. So my first time I was ever hospitalized after a suicide attempt, I was 15 years old. I remember because I actually spent my sweet 16 in the psych ward.
Ooh, sweet.
And so I was in the adolescent psychiatry unit probably, I want to say 3 or 4 occasions before the age of 19. I think it was 3. Yeah. And then I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder at age 19. But I had an awesome child and youth mental health therapist that I started with at 14. I've always been a very curious and data-driven person. I really like doing research and taking online quizzes. And I read the DSM before I ever became a social worker because I'm a big nerd.
I feel like our story has so much in common because I have done I literally owned a copy of the DSM, and I'm not, when I was that was my birthday present. And it's that's not normal, I guess, but here we are. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So I actually started doing research about what the fuck is wrong with me after, seeing a counselor for a couple of years. And I figured out that I had borderline personality disorder. And I went to this counselor and I was ready to be I'm going to prove it to you. This is what I have. And I walk in and I start talking about this and she's smiling at me. And I was what are you smiling about? And she was Danny, that's why you're seeing me.
You're oh. And you were you were not 18 yet, is that right?
I was not 18. And so she told me that they don't, in their program practice, I was living in Kelowna at the time, they don't diagnose anybody until the age of 19. But that anybody who comes through child and youth mental health with these specific set of symptoms, she's one of the primary clinicians that sees them because she specializes in BPD. And I
That's
was like,
hilarious.
okay. And she was like, yeah. So at that time, I was already in one of the DBT groups. They called it TNT, Teens Needing Tools. And
Okay.
so she told me, like, please do not tell anybody else in the group
Yeah,
that
that they
you
all
have
have BPD.
BPD because they
Yeah.
don't know yet. And I guess, like, I think the idea is that they're hoping that some of those teens might not actually end up receiving the diagnosis, right? Like, if they
Yeah.
can get the treatment in quick enough, they might be able to escape this stigmatized diagnosis, as we all know.
Hmm.
The other really interesting thing about TNT is that they actually invited parents to join too,
Okay.
which I
Which makes
have
sense.
some
It's
mixed feelings about.
the like I think the practice for underage, like under 18 DBT actually does include parents usually. And yeah, I've heard amazing things about that and I've heard awful things about that. So what was your like parent situation at this time of your life?
So, I mean, I personally believe that I developed BPD because I grew up in a violent and chaotic and abusive and neglectful household, which I think honestly is one of the primary reasons that people get BPD, whether or not they want to acknowledge that in the greater like diagnostic psychology,
Yeah.
psychiatry realm. That's been my personal experience of pretty much everybody I've ever met with BPD. So, those things come from family systems and they're created in environments. I mean, and not to say that you're not genetically predisposed to, because
Mhm.
I absolutely you are. It's always going to be a nature and nurture thing. But, we're talking about parents who've kind of created these environments for their children who have ended up with these diagnoses, attending these meetings with us. And you just,
Yeah.
even as a kid, I was able to like look at these parents and see like,
That's where it
that's
came. Yeah.
that's why you're like that.
That's so interesting. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
And some of them were like equally as disruptive as their kids were, and like would cause problems in the groups, and they would kind of cause these like little like sidebar like fights about like things. And
Mm.
even my own mom, like she tried and she did attend some of the groups, but I felt like I had to drag her to them, which didn't feel particularly helpful.
Yeah.
I've always been caught in this unfortunate situation where I have felt like I'm parenting my mother. And that
Mm.
has been on long standing. And that was a great example of that, where like, I'm trying to be responsible and get help and treatment for my mental illness that like, she kind of caused.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also have to drag her and like make her come every single freaking week.
Yeah.
And it is exhausting.
Are you an only
So,
child?
no, I have three older siblings, but they have a different father than me. And
Okay.
so they all shared the same father, and then I was born actually 5 years later.
Hmm.
So I think that none of them ended up receiving the diagnosis that I did because their father was emotionally stable and my
Right.
father was not.
Right. They had like one string that was kind of keeping them together with some sort of emotion regulation that they could at least see modeled.
Yeah, yeah. So, and like they'd go over to their dad's house on like weekends, or every so often they'd, go for a couple months and live with him. And then I would just be
Mm.
an only child with my mom. And because they were so much older than me, they ended up moving out when I was like young, right? Like I think the last one moved out when I want to say about 14, around the time that all these symptoms started really coming to head, actually.
Interesting.
But I mean, at the same time, my mom also was dating a very abusive man from my age of 7 to 14. So right around when he left is also when the symptoms started coming up. And that also was around puberty, right? So there was like a lot of factors at
Yeah.
play,
Totally.
kind of like a perfect shitstorm, really. So,
So, out of curiosity, for the not diagnosing under 19,
mhm.
as a person who you obviously had the symptoms long before 19, I also had the symptoms long before 19. What are your thoughts on that rule?
Well, again, right? Like I see their perspective in that they're trying to save people from not receiving this diagnosis that will be carried with you for the rest of your life, whether or not you are considered in remission or not. It's on your file now.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah, you
I
will be
have
stigmatized accessing healthcare services for sure. Yeah.
Yes, and I have personally absolutely experienced that. So I see where they're coming from, but on the other side of things, like I felt so lost for so long, and I felt like there was something just deeply wrong with me that was unmatched. Like nobody else
Hmm.
felt this way. There was no explanation for why I was like this until I figured it out. And like personally for me, receiving that diagnosis was an absolute breath of relief because like things started falling into place, things made sense. I had a direction of like how to move forward all of a sudden that wasn't clear before.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as I see them trying to reduce stigma, it can also cause other problems for people, right?
Well, and like, are they trying to reduce stigma or are they just avoiding stigma? Because I look at my chart from when I was a kid and I'm talking like 11, 12, and I go, are you freaking kidding me? How did you not tell somebody this? Because I'm 31. I gather you're a similar age. I got diagnosed at, yeah, 18 or 19. I can't remember. Same thing. But you look back and you go, obviously somebody knew that this was the problem. And I totally get that you don't want to have me stigmatized, but I also would have avoided however 6 years of like complete destruction that in itself exacerbates stigma if somebody had just told me what the hell was going on and helped me get the treatment that I needed. So yeah, I mean, it's a chicken or the egg situation, I guess, in some ways, right?
It is. Yeah. And I think that's why, they're starting to move on to creating or using alternate diagnoses. Like, we see CPTSD popping up a
Yeah.
lot more, which is great. And I see the value in that too. However, we're currently in the Western medical model, and that's actually not a diagnosis here that we use. So that can cause problems too, and also cause a lot of confusion
Yeah.
because I still think it's very unclear how you even tell the difference between CPTSD and BPD. They have much more overlap than they do differences.
Yeah. Like there
Um,
are some differences, but I mean, it's the same with sometimes bipolar 2, really misdiagnosed, CPTSD, even ADHD has so much overlap. I mean,
Autism.
autism, like,
Yeah.
I think that the BPD label changed my life in a positive way. And also just the treatment, at least when I was going through it, and we live in the same province, when I was going through it publicly, which is the only way I've gone through it, you had to have a diagnosis. So you could have also just treated the symptoms like this TNT thing was trying to do, but maybe not in the way that you needed it to, and at least give you some tools to help move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny that you say that because I've had a very similar experience with navigating things as a transgender person and this
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis of gender dysphoria, right? Where you
Yeah,
can't actually access medical care until you have a diagnosis, but the diagnosis itself is stigmatizing and not necessarily even accurate.
totally. Yeah, I wonder that all the time because that is still the case accessing care, at least here, right? You have to have that diagnosis, which pathologizes your identity as a human being. At least that's how, as a cis person, that's how it seems to me that you're literally being like pathologized.
Mhm.
And when did you kind of realize that you were transgender?
So that's an interesting thing. I hear a lot of people say that they knew it from a very young age, but from my own personal experience, I was trying to survive from a very young age. My gender
Mm,
identity was such a back burner thing. I couldn't even conceptualize or even put any thought into it until I was even remotely well.
interesting.
So I didn't start realizing that this transgender stuff was a reality for me until my early 20s.
Wow.
And that was after accessing DBT 3 times.
Yeah, so you really had a lot of the skills that you needed to deal with all that stuff. And then your brain was able to be like, also, there's this other huge thing that I need to tell you.
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, like, looking back in retrospect, there were signs, absolutely, but like I was just so unwell that was not a priority. It couldn't possibly have been.
Hmm.
I needed to find some semblance of stability in my life first. So, yeah, after I had met my first long-term partner and we lived together for a couple of years and like, my environment was no longer chaos,
Right.
that's when I started finding or like putting two and two together and connecting all these dots and going like, "Oh, that explains a lot."
Totally. And I find this is probably just confirmation bias because of, my platform and whatever and the people that I know. But I find there's so many gender diverse people that I interact with that have BPD.
Mhm.
In the peer support group I run, like it's got to be more than 50% of people are gender diverse in some way. And I always wonder like why that is, and not in a way that I'm trying to pathologize any gender identity because I think people are who they are, and we need to be totally okay with that. But I just find it like statistically really interesting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have so many thoughts on that because
Okay.
throughout my entire bachelor's and master's degree in social work, anytime I had like the choice of doing like a paper on specific like any topic I wanted, I pretty much exclusively wrote about either BPD, transgender identities, or both. The
Nice.
combination, the overlap of both, because I just found it really interesting. Because there's this idea that, of course, one of the
Mm-hmm.
diagnostic criteria for borderline personality disorder is like identity disturbance. So that point aside, I think, well, first of all, I've read some articles that suggest that up to 80% of transgender people experience or portray traits of borderline personality disorder, if
Hmm.
not have an actual diagnosis of it. And like without looking too much into the materials, my original like initial thought that came up for me was that, well, actually, that makes a lot of sense because, if you're taking the model of borderline personality disorder as somebody who grew up in an environment that was inherently invalidating on like as many fronts as possible, what could possibly be more invalidating than having everybody else tell you that you're wrong about your
Yeah,
identity?
that's very true.
So, talking about that and then actually looking at the research that I ended up inevitably doing, we see not only that piece, but also this other piece of minority stress theory,
Yeah.
which suggests that, like, people are moving through and being discriminated against in like every possible realm of existence, in housing, in employment, in friendships, in relationships, in family systems. So, experiencing this like onslaught of abuse in
Hmm.
no matter where they go, you're going to start looking a little crazy.
Totally. Yeah,
It's
that
kind
was
of
my first
inevitable.
thought. That was my first thought. And there's people that think that about why women are diagnosed with BPD more is just that it's a
Hmm.
way to pathologize women's normal reaction to a society that is completely not set up to support them. So I think that's also a really interesting theory of why that is.
Yeah, and I think that the evidence really supports that at this point. I've
Mm-hmm.
read a lot of articles that suggest that. And then most of the time these gender identity issues tend to start cropping up around the age of puberty, which is also when, your emotional stability tends to go south, especially for folks with this illness.
Mm-hmm.
So they all kind of wrap in together and it creates this like perfect storm of, yeah, like identity confusion and just chaos in general. And I
Mm-hmm.
think another interesting thing that I have seen is if I didn't have friends that had like gender identity thoughts that also had a BPD diagnosis, at the very least, a lot of my friends that I grew up around with this diagnosis were bisexual.
Right. Yeah.
And I
Some
think
sort
that's,
of like LGBTQ2S plus for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
But then when you're looking at the 2S LGBTQI plus population, you're looking at an unusual amount of ADHD, autism, borderline personality disorder, anxiety and depression disorders. So there definitely seems to be something here in terms of this overlap between neurodivergence and LGBTQ identities. And that's not to pathologize LGBTQ identities by any stretch of the word, but it seems like there is some kind of neurodivergence happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where I get, as a like straight cis person, I get so not like, I mean, I don't know, nervous. I don't know if that's the right word, but like I'm trying to be cautious, right? Because I see this uh like overrepresentation, at least in the circles that I create, which obviously there could be a million other factors for that. Hopefully people are feeling safe. So then they come to the circles that I create. And I'm obviously very much left leaning. So people are more, there's all these factors. But I also really don't want to put things into the like, well, it's part of the diagnosis in that you have shifting sense of identity, because to me that feels so similar to the gender dysphoria, something's wrong with you, so we're going to pathologize it, which obviously is not what you're saying, but that, just to be really like honest, I always am nervous about accidentally pathologizing when I'm looking at these two things interacting with each other.
Well, I think something that really stands out for me in this is that my identity actually became more solid the more well I became. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really important thing that isn't stressed enough in these circles is that, when we're looking at the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and when practitioners are placing that upon us, something that they need to see in order to allow you access to care is this like consistent and persistent experience. So yeah, like speaking for myself, like I it sounds a little silly, but like I became more transgender the more well I became, right?
Totally.
Like I leaned into it harder. I felt more secure and safe in that identity and expression. And that was like a pivotal point of my wellness, is actually accepting who I am instead of also being another person who's invalidating that experience. Because you can absolutely do
Yeah,
that to yourself.
that's self invalidation is so true. And I can see if you grew up your whole life just trying to survive and, like you said, not trying even intentionally, but just by nature of survival, not even addressing this part of yourself because your brain couldn't even conceptualize this. It's probably like inherently self invalidating, even if it's completely subconscious, which is super fascinating. So you live with two super discriminated against parts of yourself.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? Like, how do you act when you're accessing healthcare? Have you experienced discrimination because of your diagnosis and invalidation of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've experienced it on both fronts, really. The earliest time I can remember experiencing discrimination as a result of my BPD diagnosis, I was probably about 17. I had definitely already been hospitalized for, this illness previously. And I ended up self-harming one day enough that I needed to, go to hospital and have it addressed. And it required stitches. And I went to the emergency room and I spoke to a doctor, and, he looks at my arm and he goes, "Well, I'm not going to stitch this up. You're just going to do it again." And he actually discharged me without addressing and without,
Yeah.
doing his
Wound
job.
care. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like the one that really stands out to me. And that those kind of things have happened. I've attended like counselors, and then either disclose the diagnosis or they found it through other channels, and then they transfer me very quickly to a different counselor. I'm trying to think of more specific examples. But
But those are the ones that you even recognize, whereas there's
yeah.
probably 100 that you don't even see because you go like, "Oh, I just got bad healthcare. That happens all the time." And then
Yeah,
you're like,
totally.
"Actually, no, wait, maybe that wasn't just bad healthcare because of the health system. Maybe it was actually about something about me and as an individual, like drug seeking questions and stuff like that."
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then on the flip side, like when I started coming out as transgender, I first identified as non-binary. And I went to the psych ward actually as a result of starting to realize that I was transgender. I ended up in the psych ward because I tried so hard to be a girl and to be all of these things that I thought society and my family wanted, and I kept failing at it so miserably, and feeling like awful all the time. And then realizing that that's actually not who I am, and that's why it's been such a barrier for me. I felt like my world kind of came crashing down. And um, so I ended up hospitalized. And I think it's worth noting that that is not a unique experience. I know a ton
No.
of people who end up hospitalized immediately after realizing that they're transgender, because they realize, like, literally, how am I going to live in this society this way? Like,
Yeah.
it feels impossible. It's insurmountable, because the amount of stigma and abuse that you're about to walk into. And once that like wall is down and you've actually like accepted, like, there's no going back. Like, you can't, like, the cat's out of the bag, man.
Yeah. Well, and then I don't know about you, but for me, my BPD often presents as like one thing happens, and I'm like, well, guess I'm gonna have to die then. And like
Yeah.
it just,
Oh,
I like, that's literally anything can happen. I'm like, well, guess I'm gonna kill myself. And so you add those two things together, and I can see where that would 100% lead to hospitalization.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the tiniest thing can happen and be like, I am gonna die.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
so that's not a tiny thing, right? Like, realizing that you're transgender is
No, it's
unfortunately
like the
extremely
biggest
life
thing.
altering. I
Yeah,
can't even think of a bigger thing that I've experienced than transitioning and move, like, and just the amount of like microaggressions that happen on a daily basis. So, but yeah, but the story the story I was telling is that I used to use they them pronouns, and attending the hospital and trying to get people to use they them pronouns for you when you haven't started testosterone yet and you haven't had any surgeries yet. So and you haven't legally changed your name, so you look like this very unassuming female person. Despite
Right.
I've always been pretty androgynous, so like it shouldn't come as a shock to people.
Right.
At least I don't think so. But like when you're in hospital, you're constantly having providership, right? Like every 12 hours, you got a new nurse, you got people walking down the hallways that work there, and you're constantly being misgendered, constantly. And I would try and correct people, and they'd either like stare at me like I had two heads, or they'd be like, "Oh yeah," and then immediately forget and then do it again.
So when
When
was
you're in,
this? So you were 20, so this was like 2015-ish, give or take?
yes, about yeah,
Maybe
it'd be
slightly earlier.
about
Yeah.
2015, 2016 ish.
Okay. I'm just trying to
So
think of like in
10
terms
years
of
ago.
people being more aware of it. Like I would be super curious. Obviously, there's always going to be people who either are just completely clueless or are doing it on purpose. There's always those people. But I'm always so interested by time and how we shift in our ability as a society to deal with like changing how we see something as what used to be so binary as gender. You look at like old people and some of them can wrap their head around it so well and some of them just cannot do it. So 10 years ago is, I would think, very different than now, but I'm not that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's definitely like there's been a bit of a cultural shift for both better and for worse, as we know, with
Yeah.
things happening brewing south and even in Canada here. And it wasn't as widely talked about or known about 10 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, funny enough, I before I ended up hospitalized and was making these connections, I started thinking about, testosterone and how I could access it. And I was going all over online trying to figure out like what doctor even gives this to you back in Kelowna and 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. And I found out through these online channels and forum posts of transgender people that like there's only two doctors in Kelowna that issue HRT, and they're both psychiatrists. So
So there's a huge barrier to access a psychiatrist.
actually not as much 10 years ago as there is now,
Okay,
certainly.
fair.
But I mean, like I've noticed the shift more recently that they tend to refer you to endocrinologists now who specialize in
Mm-hmm.
hormones. So that makes way more sense.
Totally.
But at the time, yeah, there's just these two psychiatrists. And it actually turns out after I started exploring more that one of them had retired. So there was one person who was gender affirming in that town. I already had a psychiatrist because,
Yeah. Woo.
going through it.
Yeah.
And I started like looking up experiences, and it turns out that the psychiatrist assigned to me had very explicitly condemned, at the time it was called gender identity disorder, and stated that he did not believe in it. So I was not able to access my assigned psychiatrist for this reason. So I went to an
Did that psychiatrist know you were non-binary or no?
no.
Okay. Oh
No,
God.
I
Okay.
hadn't disclosed it to any practitioners at that point yet. I just kind of started doing my research about like
Mm-hmm.
what do I even do?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the one place that this psychiatrist worked outside of the hospital was like this like outreach clinic for unhoused people.
Okay.
So I'm like a tiny first or second year college student who really didn't have any business being at like an OPS outreach clinic at the
Right. Yeah.
time.
OPS
But
is
I was a
overdose
social.
prevention site. I just always try
Oh,
and do the acronyms. Overdose prevention site. Yeah.
yes, thank you. Yeah, I get all
I
enmeshed in
know.
my acronyms.
Me too.
But like I was a social work student, and I also grew up in like the ghetto basically of Surrey and then of Kelowna. So yeah, so I went to this outreach clinic and tried to access this doctor, and he asked me a lot of questions. And getting a diagnosis of gender dysphoria is very invasive. I'll say as an aside, like they basically want you to prove it to you using anecdotes of your past, which is like a really weird thing because like anything that I say, like there are men that are cisgender men that enjoy nail polish and makeup. There
Right.
are cisgender women that only want to work on trucks and be in dirt. Like none of these things actually mean anything. But
And so
so,
that was what they were trying to get you to prove. Like, oh, I've always been into Barbies or what, or like the other way around, whatever, is like
yeah. So
how they
like
diagnose this.
their questions are like, so how do you know that you're transgender, basically? And then you have to go through, and I have to be like, well, when I was this age, I would like secretly bind my chest, and I liked how it looked. And when I was this age, I only wanted to be around boys, and I felt like, oh, I'm not like other girls. And you go through all of these
Right.
like stories of your life to like prove that you're transgender. It's a really weird thing because
Yeah.
like literally anybody could in theory do it because like it's all meaningless. Like these things
Yeah.
are socially constructed.
Totally.
Um so so I went through and he wanted me to get off of birth control, I think, because I was on like estrogen oral birth
Right.
control at the time. So I didn't end up getting on testosterone for a while because after I got off birth control, like my hormones went crazy and we had to deal with that because I was on that for like 10 years.
Right.
Um, but anyway, so after like my life kind of blew up and I had disclosed to my partner at the time that I was trans and realized like I don't want to birth children ever, which was a deal breaker for our relationship. And then that relationship
Mm,
ending and just yeah, chaos. I ended up in the hospital, and this psychiatrist actually works out of the hospital too, which was great for me. That actually worked out very well. So when I went, I showed up wearing my chest binder. But for people that don't know, it's kind of like a sports bra but tighter, and it keeps your chest bound to you, so it looks like you have a flat chest.
mm-hmm.
And I want to preface this by saying that there is absolute like it's there's no way that you could hang yourself with this. Okay. I want to be very clear.
Right.
It is like a army vest that is like a half tank. And when you go there, when you go to the psych ward, as anybody who's been there knows, they take everything from you, like shoelaces, belts, but also all of your clothes. They make you change into the hospital jammies. And they insisted on taking my chest binder, and I was like sobbing and like, you can't take it.
Mm,
Like I need it. And like fighting with them, not like physically, but like,
yeah. Yeah.
arguing and being like this, like, I can't, like, you try and hang yourself with this, please. I would love to see you try.
I will watch you
Yeah.
try.
And like, we got into such a fight that they had to bring the psychiatrist in. And lo and behold, the only gender affirming psychiatrist.
Thank
And
God.
he was like, yeah, let them keep their binder. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh.
So
So every once in a while, life works out, doesn't it?
yeah. Yeah. So after that, he actually accepted me as a patient in his not private practice, but he had a separate community outpatient practice that
Mm,
was like on the down low, and he accepted me into that. So I was able to access hormones through him, which was great. And he still prescribes my hormones actually, which is lovely.
nice.
He's awesome. Yeah. So I was able to access care, but that was that not allowing me to have my binder. Like if it wasn't for him, and some of these hospitals I know for sure, would do this, is I would have had all of my things like the only things left in my life that helped me feel safe in that moment would
Yeah.
have been literally stripped from me.
Yeah, literally.
And they don't talk about these things and they don't address these things in hospital. And I hear about these stories again and again and again of trans people, probably going there because they realize they're freaking trans and trying to navigate a horrific system that genuinely despises trans people. Some of these units are gender segregated, right? And we're
Yeah.
putting transgender people on in an inappropriate unit because we don't want to make the other patients feel uncomfortable. Okay, but what
Yeah.
about this person, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the first experiences I remember of being discriminated against for that basis. And beyond the fact that I was just constantly misgendered after telling people sobbing all day long that like, I'm here because I'm transgender, and then they misgender me.
Right.
It's beautiful. We love it. And then the second one that really stands out for me is coming out to my first ever counselor. I was seeing her for probably 3 or 4 months before I came out to her as trans. It didn't go great. Like, I mean, she wasn't discriminatory. She didn't like tell me, I'm wrong or anything like that, but she basically just like kind of stared at me and like didn't really know what I was talking about clearly. And then we never talked about it again. Like she literally never brought it up again, never asked me about it. And at that point, like, I didn't feel safe talking about it either. Like, she
Yeah.
doesn't want to talk about it, I'm not going to talk about it.
Totally.
So we went ahead and we pretended that we never had that conversation and never existed, which unfortunately was like a complete and exact replication of my family situation where we never talked about anything and we swept everything under the rug and we never addressed our issues. So it was just replaying like my experiences of
That you were
like
in
childhood
counseling for in
harm.
the first place, realistically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, coming out to my family wasn't really a piece of cake either. And I have experienced just a lot of abuse. Like I was saying before we joined on today, I've been doxxed. And I was only doxxed because I said on my dating profile online that I was a transgender man. I had a gay man, actually, unfortunately, screenshot my profile and start sharing it to as many transgender hate forums as he could, being like, this woman is pretending to be a gay man and she's trying to convert gay men into heterosexuality, which is a
What
really
the
weird mental
fuck?
gymnastics to go to.
Yeah. Oh my God. That
And that was
is,
after I started testosterone, by the way. I looked like
yeah.
this, and he's trying to say that I'm like
So this was like a
freaking
dude on Grinder or something?
yeah, yeah,
Holy fuck. Wow. I, people are fucked.
yeah, yeah. It's
Like,
not great.
I'm so sorry that happened. Oh my God. So where do you, what do you do now when you're I mean, you have a partner now, right? But like, that must be terrifying to even try and date at all after that
Yeah.
experience.
Well, because here's the thing, right? Is because we're told as transgender people that if you don't tell people that you're trans, you're tricking them, and that they
Yeah.
could actually
It's
you're
it's rape, is some people will say.
yes, it's
Yeah.
rape, and that they have the right to physically assault or kill you because
Yeah.
you tricked them first.
Yep.
So
And it
as a
happens.
yeah, absolutely it does. So as like a terrified transgender person trying to do my best, I stated it in my dating profile so that nobody had to guess, and that it was like, so if they're not interested in trans people, great, move
Yeah,
on.
move on. Yeah.
But that's apparently not an appropriate solution either, because I'm subjecting myself to violence if I do that too. There's no winning, because the reality is that people don't want trans people to exist.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
totally. Yeah, and that's the thing too is I think people assume that the LGBTQ2S plus community is all like sunshine and rainbows about each other. And from my understanding is sometimes that's where the most discrimination comes from.
yeah, it's before I identified as a trans man, I identified as a bisexual woman at one point in my life, and I experienced a lot of discrimination
Yeah.
as a bi woman
Bisexual,
too,
yeah,
which
totally.
is really funny because it was like all from within the community, or not
Hmm.
all of it. I can't say that, but certainly a large amount of it. Like the exclusion happened more from within the community than from without. Yeah.
And now
So
we have just like the fucking news.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
just existing.
we're recording this on what day is it? September 20th. And I mean, I'm not gonna go into it, but when we found out that the individual in the news recently had a trans partner, I don't know about you, but I literally went, fuck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I was like, no, no, that's just the other side trying to make it a thing, trying to make it a thing, and then it turned out real, and I went, oh my god, no, like it just because we can't keep doing this, we can't keep blaming trans people for all of the world's problems. Trans people are just trying to be themselves and like surviving.
Why can't we talk about the other 98% of shooters who are men,
Literally,
cisgender men? Why can't we, or 99 probably? I
yeah.
doubt it's even 1%.
Oh
Yeah.
no, yeah, I know. It's, oh my God, it makes me so scared for the world. And I have all of the privilege that, like, I'm not going to be targeted, like it just, yeah. So, anyways, not to be a huge downer, but it's the reality of the world right now is like just discrimination in healthcare, I think, has happened forever because doctors like to see things in a binary and it's easier for them and that's how they were trained. And now it's
Mhm.
just like all day, every day. This is all we hear about. And I can't imagine how terrifying that must be.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I have to, or I don't have to, but like I hear stories constantly from my friends and loved ones, people I care about, of attending hospital, and most of them have both gender dysphoria and BPD as diagnoses on their charts, and
Yeah.
walking in and just being humiliated and discredited and discriminated against, and they're just trying to survive. Like we're all just trying to survive, man.
Hmm.
I personally, as somebody who works in mental health myself, I personally really enjoy working with people with borderline personality disorder. And because there's so much stigma, I hope that that's refreshing.
We both work in mental health, and I am now less careful about it because I'm just so like I've been doing like so much public stuff for so long that I'm like everybody knows it's whatever. But before that, I was very careful about who I told and I would wait until they said something like exactly like that to then go, oh, that's funny because I have it and I don't think I'm that bad or whatever it is, just to like let people embarrass themselves enough to never
Ooh,
forget it either. It's a bitchy approach, but it works really well because they'll never say it again.
you know
And
what? I respect the hell out of that.
yeah, there's some I've got some interesting experiences of just like people putting their foot in their mouths and then just being like, actually, just so you know, I when I got diagnosed, XYZ, and the look on their face is wild. But you're you're more open about it now at work, which I really respect because the minute I saw that anti-stigma video, which is incredible, and I was like, "Yay, another BPD person!" It's like part of my crew. I was so happy to see that, and those videos get into some really like intense things that happen in terms of stigma in the workplace. They're really fascinating. You were probably scared as hell to do those videos. That and to talk about being trans in the workplace, which I think is also can't be an easy thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah. Up until that point, I had shared so few people about my previous diagnosis. I mean, the clinic that I work out of is fantastic. I love every single person that works there. They're amazing human beings. And I have been more forthcoming with them prior, like previous employers, previous
Mm-hmm.
workplaces. No, I kept that shit on the down low hard. Like I
Yeah.
would never have admitted that I had borderline personality disorder to an employer before. Oh my God. Like the amount of stigma I experienced in the hospital where they're actually supposed to help you and treat you
Yeah.
and keep you safe, that's
And you don't have to
mortifying.
see them every day of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But something changed in me when I realized that I had to transition. And
Mm,
it's funny, like as much as my gender identity and my BPD diagnosis are separate, they are also intertwined because they're part of my history and they're part of my wellness journey, both of these things, right? So when I started working at this current workplace, I told them day one that I was transgender. I actually moved across the province and I didn't tell them until I had moved to this new city that I'd never been to before and had
wow.
knew nobody in. And I was like, I have to do it. Like if I don't do it right now, then I'm never going to do it because I never had before. And I took that leap of faith, and I'm so glad that I did because my life has changed in such a miraculously positive way. Like I could cry like how important that decision was, and being the more genuine and authentic I am about sharing these parts of myself, the more I have grown to love not only the people that I'm around, but also myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like being true to who you are in all realms is life changing. And I totally respect and understand that not everybody is in a position to do that. And absolutely, you shouldn't do that if you're not safe to do it. But I was at this
Which
point in
you've
my life.
learned. You've done that and it's been very unsafe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've lost countless people in my life. I've experienced countless discrimination and abuse. And I was at this point where like, fuck it. Like if I don't do this, then like I don't think I'm gonna make it. So I did it. It worked out really well. But luckily I'm in healthcare and I think people generally, when you're working in healthcare, want to do good. Like,
Yeah,
as much as
nobody
I've
comes into this to
experienced.
make billions of dollars. That doesn't really work that way.
No, right? Like as much as I've experienced discrimination while moving through healthcare as a patient, now working in it as a professional, I know that like 98% of the people I work with are there because they want to help and they want to do better for people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very accepting environment, which I'm so very grateful for. And as a result of that and moving through, and of course, I still, even then, I still experience discrimination. I've still experienced misgendering on a near constant basis for several years before people started getting it, especially as like the more male presenting I became after being on testosterone for a longer period of time, the better people got around me with, which I understand, it's easier when you're literally looking at it. It happens, but that just gave me that bravery to be like, I can share other parts of myself too.
Mm-hmm.
And I started talking first, just dipping the toe in, be like, yeah, I've experienced depression and
Yeah.
anxiety, and seeing how people react to that. And my coworkers were, yeah, it was like a very normal conversation. And then I started sharing that, and that I had BPD, and that was accepted quite well. And then when this opportunity for the anti-stigma campaign came up, I thought about it and I talked to those colleagues that I had already disclosed to, and they were like, if if you feel safe enough to do this, like one person in particular was like, I feel very strongly that you are not going to lose your job doing this. Like,
Hmm.
because it's the employer who's asking for this campaign, you
Yeah.
have a really good shot of safety here. And if you got fired on that basis, like they would have a lot of explaining to do,
Yeah.
like an insurmountable amount of
Yeah.
explaining to do. Like it would be way more work for them than it would be to just keep you on. So I think
Hmm.
you're in the clear here. And it was just another one of those leaps of faith, right? Where it was like, okay, so this is my experience. It's funny because I tell people now that I have this historical diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and they often don't believe me,
Right. Yeah, I get that too.
or,
Well,
or
and
they're
because
just like
so much of our patient
shocked.
population has BPD. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to go to your details of what program you're with, but like at least 50% of the patients must have BPD, I would assume, or traits,
Yeah.
if not
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're seeing it all the time, and they're seeing it in the most complex mental health and substance use patients in Canada, essentially. But
Yes.
like, they're not seeing people like us with that label, and that's what I think is
Mhm.
actually the most amazing part of it is the more we talk, the more they go, oh, so it's not just people that are very, very, very ill. You can have a normal life. And I like to think, whether or not it's true, I don't know, but I'm going to continue to tell myself this, that we're helping their patients by allowing them, the provider, to see that there's hope beyond just survival. There's hope that can look like living a life actually that you want to, that's worth living, that's like their life, which I think is
Believe it or
cool.
not, you can be a fully functioning member of society and
Yeah,
have borderline personality disorder as a diagnosis. We are
totally.
both living proof of this.
Exactly. Yeah. And but I think a lot of people don't know that,
Yeah, oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. And the more that we stay in the dark about this, the less people are going to know, right? Like I think it's so important that whoever has the courage and like the capacity to speak up about these issues should. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel the same way about being transgender, especially now that I'm fully passing, like I'm never misgendered anymore. There is like,
Right.
unless it's by somebody that knew me before,
Yeah.
but I think it's still important for myself as a trans person who passes to talk about these issues, right? Because people need to know that trans people are just normal freaking human beings too. We can be in your workplaces and be productive members of society just like people with BPD can. Because the reality is these diagnoses aside, we are all just people trying to get through, trying to survive.
Yeah.
Literally everybody is.
Totally. 100%.
Shocker.
Shocking. And yeah, the world just makes it as difficult as humanly possible these days, but here we are just trying to do the right thing. Okay, so final question I always ask is, what is your favorite part of having had borderline personality disorder?
Well, I have a couple of remarks about that. First of all, I noticed that your podcast name is Super Feelers, which I appreciate the layers that has. As somebody who has lived through it, I can attest that we don't only just experience negative emotions deeply; we experience all emotions deeply, right? And I think that there's a certain amount of a gift of experiencing things with so much passion, and I bring so much passion to the things that I care about. But beyond that, because I think that's a pretty generic that's a pretty
No, but it's
generic
very true.
response when it comes to this diagnosis. Beyond that, as somebody who works in mental health, I think it's an absolute gift to bring my lived experience to it. And like I kind of talk about in those videos, people don't have to know that I have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder to know that I'm not just there for the money. I think it becomes very apparent when I work with patients that I kind of know what I'm talking about. And I know, like, I understand on a deeper level what kind of things they're experiencing. It brings a lot of value and a lot of expertise to my practice that other people who haven't had these experiences can't possibly compare to.
Hmm. Yeah, and you know what you're talking about, not on a textbook level, on a deep, I don't know, vibes level is so like 2025 of me to say, but there's something. This is why, like, when I found out you had BPD, I immediately was like, yes, one of my people, because we don't have to talk about this. We're talking about it right now, but I get you, you get me, and there's just this unspoken thing where we are connected for life, regardless of whether or not we've ever had a conversation about it. And I think that's incredible for not only people like me who get to work with you, but also people who are your clients who probably haven't felt seen in the way you can see them ever.
Yeah. And that's why, when I get BPD clients referred to us, bring them on, man. Like, let's do
Yeah.
it. I bet maybe we can even actually get somewhere, because like it's honestly not even hard to work with people with BPD. You just have to validate them. Like,
Yeah.
that's all you got to do. And they're like,
Just do what our parents didn't do, for the love of God. That's all we need.
just like give them a compliment, tell them they're doing a good job in like a genuine way, and like you're gonna have a great client.
Totally. It's so true. I've never heard that so simple before, but yeah, I mean, hey, think about that. That's literally all it is. I love it.
If I give tips to other practitioners who are like, I really struggle with working with this particular population, I'm like, have you tried invalidating them? Or sorry, have you
Or
tried validating
validating them.
them?
Yeah. They're like, yeah, I invalidate them every day. Why? It's not working.
Yeah, I can't figure it out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
literally like say like increase the level of validation you give them by like 10%, and they will become an easier client to work with. I guarantee it.
That's such good advice. That's incredible. Awesome. Well, thank you, Danny, so much. This has been so much fun. And I will see you, I think, next week at work anyways. But
Yeah.
it's funny. I never get to say that about people, but thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you for having me, Lori. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to learn more about the Superfeeler podcast, share your story, or participate in the Superfeelers Club, which is our peer support group, it's totally free, virtual, and open to anyone who experiences intense emotions or has borderline personality disorder, please check out the link in our show notes or go to laurieedmondson.com. If you would like to support the show, we would very much appreciate it. There's an option to do monthly small donations at whatever denomination you'd like, and you get bonus content, extra resources, and extra connection to me. That can be found on patreon.com/superfeeler, or again in the notes below. Thanks again, and have a great day.